CEO goes undercover as a receptionist and discovers absolute shocking news about this staff, what puts him in a very strange situations. Marcus Fletcher sat in his corner office, surrounded by awards, certificates, and sleek furniture that signaled his success. The city skyline outside his window had always filled him with pride, a reminder of the empire he had built from the ground up. But today the view seemed distant, cold, and strangely hollow. On his desk sat the employee satisfaction report, his brow furrowed as he scanned the figures, struggling to comprehend what he was reading. A 15% drop in employee satisfaction for the third month in a row at one of his key offices in Richmond, Virginia. It wasn't just a slight dip, it was catastrophic. There were stacks of complaints about a toxic work culture, claims of favoritism, and even potential racism, red flags that demanded immediate action. Marcus leaned back in his chair, his mind racing. How had things gone so wrong without him noticing? He had prided himself on creating a company where employees felt valued and respected. Yet here it was in black and white. Tech Vision, his brainchild, was suffering under a hidden darkness he had failed to see. Drastic times call for drastic measures. Marcus thought as he made a decision that would change everything. He would go undercover, not just to observe, but to experience the everyday reality of his employees. He would put himself on the front lines as a low-level receptionist to see the company through their eyes. It was a radical move, one that his PR team would have advised against, but Marcus was beyond caring about optics. If his company was rotting from the inside, he needed to cut to the core and fix it before it was too late. Disguising himself was no easy task. Gone were the sharp suits, the polished Oxfords, and the authoritative posture he carried in boardrooms. Instead, he donned a standard-issue uniform, a simple button-up shirt, slacks, and scuffed shoes. He even added a fake mustache for good measure, hoping it would help him blend into the background. As he stepped into the office building he had once ruled from the top floor, a strange mix of anticipation and fear settled over him. This was his empire, his vision brought to life. But today, he was no one special. Just another face in the crowd. The bustling lobby was a world away from the quiet sanctum of his executive office. The weight of the telephone and the constant stream of tasks, answering calls, greeting visitors, managing the chaos of the front desk, were overwhelming. Marcus wasn't used to this kind of work. It felt foreign, almost beneath him. But that was the point. He needed to understand what it felt like to be at the bottom. As he glanced at his reflection in the lobby's glass doors, he barely recognized himself. The confident CEO was gone, replaced by someone who felt out of place and invisible. No one met his gaze, no one recognized him. And that was when the first realization struck him. Just how invisible many employees must feel every day. His first day on the job was a shock to the system. The switchboard seemed to have a mind of its own, with calls coming in faster than he could handle. He fumbled with transferring calls, and the steady stream of visitors only added to the pressure. Every small mistake made him feel incompetent. And the looks he got from passing employees, some of them, likely people he had hired, were filled with impatience. By midday, Marcus found himself seated at the reception desk, typing out a memo that seemed to take longer than it should have. As he worked, he overheard two senior managers chatting nearby. They didn't notice him, just another receptionist in the background. "And did you see the latest email about the new efficiency measures?" One of them asked, casually leaning against the desk. "Yeah," the other responded with a laugh. "Just what we needed, more work for less pay. The customer service team is already overworked as it is." "Well, it's not our problem, is it?" the first manager said with a shrug. "Let HR deal with the complaints. We've got more important things to focus on." Their casual disregard for the well-being of the employees hit Marcus like a punch to the gut. Was this the culture he had fostered? A place where management cared more about their own convenience than the people who kept the company running? As the managers walked away, still oblivious to his presence, Marcus felt a growing sense of discomfort. His whole life had been built around the idea of leading with integrity. Yet here was evidence of a culture that had slipped into something ugly and unrecognizable. How had it come to this? Later that day, Marcus found himself in the break room, refilling his coffee cup, when he overheard yet another unsettling conversation. This time, it was between several members of his management team, and their conversation was filled with frustration and dismissive comments about the lower-level employees. One manager even went so far as to insult the customer service team, throwing in a few curse words while the others laughed at the whole situation. Marcus felt a surge of shame and anger. These were the people he had trusted to lead with empathy and responsibility, but instead, they seemed entrenched in a culture of elitism where the struggles of the staff were treated as a joke. By the end of the day, Marcus was physically and emotionally drained. The work was harder than he had imagined, but it was the emotional toll that weighed heaviest on him. The realization that his management team had become so detached from the reality of the employees' experiences left him questioning everything. But amidst the darkness, he found a glimmer of light in Doris, a seasoned receptionist who had been with the company for years. She patiently showed him the ropes, explaining the intricacies of the front desk with a kindness that stood in stark contrast to the management he had witnessed earlier. During their break, she shared a knowing smile and said, "It's just a job, but don't expect anyone up there to notice us. To them, we're invisible." Her words hit Marcus like a gut punch. He had always prided himself on running a company where every employee felt valued and recognized for their contributions. But here was Doris, a long-serving and dedicated worker, bluntly telling him that in the eyes of the upper management, she was nothing more than a faceless employee. As the day ended, Marcus removed his uniform and stared at his reflection in the mirror. The face that looked back at him was tired, not just from the physical demands of the job, but from the weight of the uncomfortable truths he had uncovered. He had started this undercover assignment to gain insight into the company's operations, but instead, he had uncovered an ugly culture of disrespect and disregard that had taken root in the very organization he had built. The next morning, Marcus returned to the office with a renewed sense of determination. His mission was no longer just about understanding the company's challenges, it was about fixing them. The first step was observing more of the key players in the Richmond office, particularly Linda, a senior manager who had been praised for her efficiency and no-nonsense approach to business. Linda had always been held up as an example of what leadership should look like at TechVision, and Marcus had trusted her with significant responsibilities. But as he settled into his role at the front desk, he began to notice a disturbing pattern in her behavior. Linda's interactions with lower-level employees were harsh and demeaning. Her words were filled with insults, and her body language radiated an air of superiority that made Marcus uncomfortable. She barked orders at people, barely looking at them, and seemed to relish in making others feel small. The turning point came when Linda approached Marcus at the front desk, her face twisted in frustration. "Is this seriously how you're handling things?" she snapped. "I've never seen such a disaster at reception. Papers everywhere, phones ringing off the hook, and you can't even answer them on time. No wonder this place is falling apart. It's because you people can't even do the basics right." "You people?" Marcus thought, his hands clenching. What did that even mean? Her words cut deep, not just because they were aimed at him, but because they reflected a deeper issue. Linda's complete lack of respect for the people who kept the company running. As Linda stormed off, Marcus stood there in disbelief, his heart pounding. He had always believed in fostering a respectful and positive work culture, but here was one of his senior managers tearing into him for doing his job, all because she saw herself as above everyone else. Nearby, Henry, a kind-hearted IT worker, exchanged a knowing look with a colleague and muttered, "Don't think too much about it. That's just the way she acts." Henry's words hit Marcus like a second blow. Not only was Linda's behavior unacceptable, but it was also a regular occurrence, something that had been normalized within the office. The realization that this toxic culture had developed under his leadership filled him with a sense of betrayal and failure. As the day progressed, Marcus became more aware of the interactions happening around him. He noticed how employees seemed to shrink in Linda's presence, their shoulders tensing as she approached. Others adopted a defensive stance, ready to deflect whatever criticism she would throw their way. The atmosphere was thick with fear and resentment, and Marcus couldn't help but wonder how his senior team had missed these signs for so long. Over the next few days, Marcus continued his undercover role, paying close attention to the dynamics between employees. He began to see patterns in the way people interacted with each other, particularly how certain managers treated those beneath them. One afternoon, he overheard Linda having a conversation with another department head. "We need to streamline operations," she said in a clipped tone, her eyes scanning the room. "I don't care if it means cutting corners. Our numbers are down, and we need to fix that, fast." The other manager nodded in agreement, not daring to challenge her. Marcus felt a knot tighten in his stomach. Linda's focus on efficiency at the expense of employee well-being was exactly the kind of short-sighted leadership that had caused the problems TechVision was facing. It was no wonder employee satisfaction had plummeted. But amidst the negativity, Marcus found hope in employees like Henry and Angela, a senior accountant who had been with the company for years. Angela was often the first to arrive in the office and the last to leave, her dedication to her work apparent in everything she did. One evening, as the office emptied out, Marcus overheard a conversation between Angela and a colleague. "You're still here?" the colleague asked, surprised. "Yeah," Angela replied with a tired smile. "Just finishing up the quarterly reports. They need to be perfect for the board meeting tomorrow." "But it's your daughter's recital tonight, right?" the colleague said, frowning. A look of pain crossed Angela's face, but she brushed it off. "I'll make it up to her this weekend." As the colleague left, Marcus felt a pang of guilt. He had no idea that employees like Angela were making such sacrifices, while managers like Linda dismissed their contributions as insignificant. Henry, too, stood out as a beacon of positivity in the office. He moved from desk to desk, solving technical issues with a patient smile. But it wasn't just his IT skills that impressed Marcus. It was the way Henry lifted the spirits of everyone around him. One day, Marcus witnessed a touching scene where a new intern was struggling with a broken computer, tears of frustration in her eyes. Henry approached her gently, offering to help. "We'll figure it out together," he said with a reassuring smile. For the next hour, Henry stayed by her side, not only fixing the problem, but teaching her basic troubleshooting skills along the way. His kindness was evident in every interaction, and it was clear that he was someone who made a real difference in the office. As the days passed, Marcus began to see employees like Angela and Henry as more than just workers. They were the hidden pillars of TechVision, embodying the dedication and compassion that he had always wanted in his company. Yet, they had been overlooked and undervalued for too long. By the end of his undercover week, Marcus faced a deep realization. The problems at TechVision were far bigger than he had initially thought. It wasn't just about one bad manager or a few disgruntled employees. It was about a culture that had allowed toxicity to fester and talent to be ignored. With this newfound understanding, Marcus knew he needed to take action, and fast. The following Monday, Marcus called an emergency meeting with his board and senior management team. As he entered the boardroom, this time as himself, Marcus Fletcher, CEO, there was a palpable tension in the room. His team looked at him with a mix of surprise and curiosity, unaware of the full extent of what he had discovered. "Thank you all for coming on short notice," Marcus began, his tone serious. "There are some serious issues that have come to light over the past week. I've been undercover within the company, and what I've seen has been both eye-opening and deeply concerning." He paused, allowing the weight of his words to sink in. The senior managers exchanged uneasy glances, and Marcus could see the discomfort on Linda's face as she shifted in her seat. "Our company is facing a crisis," Marcus continued. "Employee satisfaction has dropped by 15%, and I've uncovered widespread favoritism, a lack of recognition for hard work, and a toxic work culture that is undermining everything we've built." Linda's discomfort grew as Marcus spoke, but he remained focused on his message. "Bendicios. I've seen extraordinary dedication from employees like Angela and Henry, who are not receiving the recognition they deserve. Our current system is failing them, and it's failing the company." Marcus's words were met with a mix of defensive responses and silence. Some managers tried to justify their actions, while others looked genuinely concerned. "We need to address these issues head-on," Marcus said, his voice firm. "Starting today, we're implementing a new framework for promotions and recognition. Employees will be evaluated based on merit, not social connections, and we're introducing regular feedback mechanisms to ensure that everyone has a voice." The room was silent, the weight of the changes sinking in. Marcus knew that change wouldn't come easily, but he was determined to see it through. After the meeting, Marcus sat in his office, reflecting on the necessary changes. He knew that transforming TechVision's culture wouldn't happen overnight, but he was committed to the process. He wanted to create a workplace where dedication and talent were recognized, regardless of someone's rank or social circle. Just as Marcus was about to leave for the day, there was a knock on his door. It was Linda, her face pale and her hands trembling. "Mr. Fletcher," she began, her voice shaky. "There's something I need to confess. It's about the complaints, the toxic culture. We've been manipulated." Marcus's heart raced. He had expected resistance, but not this level of fear. "Go on," he said, keeping his voice calm. Linda took a deep breath, her eyes darting nervously around the room. "There's someone working against us, feeding misinformation and stirring up trouble from the outside. It's not just internal issues, it's sabotage." Before Marcus could respond, Linda's phone buzzed. She glanced at the screen, her face going pale. "Oh no," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "It's happening again." She handed Marcus her phone, showing him a live video feed from a hidden security camera in the general office. The footage was disturbing. An unidentified figure in a black hoodie and mask was going from desk to desk, threatening employees, using their personal secrets to manipulate them. "Who is that?" Marcus asked, his voice filled with confusion. "I don't know," Linda replied, her voice trembling. "But they've been making people act out of fear, forcing them to mess things up or risk exposure." Marcus's mind raced. If Linda was telling the truth, the problems at TechVision were far more complex than he had initially thought. Someone was sabotaging the company from the outside, manipulating employees and undermining leadership. Just then, there was another knock at the door. A tall man in a suit entered, carrying a briefcase. Marcus recognized him immediately, Oliver Grant, a well-known investigator who specialized in fraud and corporate sabotage. "I'm here because I received an anonymous tip," Oliver said, his voice calm but firm. "I believe someone is sabotaging your company from within. The person behind this has detailed knowledge of your operations and is using that to create chaos." Oliver's words only deepened the mystery. Marcus remembered recent decisions that had seemed off in hindsight, choices that had led to discord within the company. Was it all part of a larger plan to bring TechVision down? Oliver opened his briefcase and laid out the evidence. "We traced the sabotage to a former employee who was let go under suspicious circumstances last year. They've been holding a grudge and using their inside knowledge to disrupt your company's operations." Marcus felt a chill run down his spine. The former employee had been a senior analyst who had access to sensitive data and intimate knowledge of the company's inner workings. "There's more," Oliver continued. "This person has a network of accomplices. They've been using personal secrets to control and manipulate employees, making them act out of fear. It's all part of a larger plan to damage your leadership and ruin the company's reputation." The discovery left Marcus reeling. The problems at TechVision were far bigger than he had realized. It wasn't just internal dysfunction. Someone was actively working to sabotage the company from the outside. In the weeks that followed, Marcus worked closely with Oliver to root out the source of the sabotage. They uncovered a web of deceit and manipulation, orchestrated by someone Marcus had once trusted. The former employee had recruited others, using their personal secrets as leverage to sow discord and chaos within the company. The investigation led to serious confrontations and legal battles as Marcus and his team worked to uncover the full extent of the damage. But amidst the turmoil, Marcus made a promise to himself to rebuild TechVision from the ground up, creating a culture of transparency, respect, and integrity. The first step was dealing with Linda and the other managers who had perpetuated the toxic culture. Marcus called them into his office one by one, showing them the evidence of their actions. Linda, in particular, was held accountable for her role in fostering a culture of fear and disrespect. "Your behavior has been unacceptable," Marcus told her, his voice firm. "You've treated your coworkers with disdain, and you've hidden crucial information from the leadership. There will be consequences." Linda was suspended, along with several other managers who had contributed to the toxic culture. They were required to undergo training on workplace behavior and were given the chance to make amends by apologizing to their teams. At the same time, Marcus worked to reward the employees who had remained dedicated and honest throughout the ordeal. Angela and Henry were two of the first to be recognized. Angela, who had worked tirelessly for years without recognition, was finally promoted and given a raise. Her new position reflected the hard work and sacrifices she had made, often at the expense of her personal life. Henry, whose kindness and positivity had been a beacon of hope in the office, was also rewarded. He was promoted to lead the IT department and given more say in company decisions. His technical skills and leadership abilities were finally recognized, and Marcus made sure that Henry's contributions were properly valued. In addition to the personnel changes, Marcus introduced a series of new policies to prevent future issues. Regular feedback sessions were implemented to ensure that employees at all levels had a voice. There were new, clearer channels for reporting problems and a more transparent system for promotions and recognition. Marcus also made a conscious effort to be more present in the day-to-day operations of the company. He wanted to be seen, to listen to his employees, and to create an environment where everyone felt valued and supported. As Marcus looked out over the city skyline from his office, he felt the weight of the past few months lift slightly. The crisis had tested him in ways he hadn't anticipated, but it had also strengthened his commitment to lead TechVision with integrity and fairness. The road ahead wouldn't be easy, but Marcus knew that, with the right changes in place, TechVision could become a company where everyone, from the highest executive to the newest receptionist, could thrive. Have you ever experienced or witnessed toxic behavior in the workplace? How was it handled? Thank you for watching. If this story touched your heart, please subscribe. Your support helps me keep creating these stories, and I'm so glad to have you on this journey with me.